She opened the door, dragging her feet after the longest day, expecting the quiet comfort of her room. Instead, she froze. Her posters were gone, the shelves filled with someone else's trinkets, her bed neatly made with fresh linens that weren't hers. Her desk, once cluttered with her favorite notebooks and little keepsakes, had been shoved to a corner, boxed up like trash. Her heart raced, her stomach twisted with shock and humiliation. How could they do this to her? Her own family had handed over her sanctuary to her brother's new wife, smiling as if it were the most natural thing. Anger flared hot inside her, and for a moment she couldn't breathe, her hands shaking as she touched the empty space where her things used to sit. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all that came out was a tight, bitter silence. The betrayal was sharp, cutting deeper than she expected. Every corner of the room whispered that she no longer belonged there, and for the first time, she realized that her family didn't see her as an equal, they had always favored him, and now the truth was laid bare. She took a shaky breath, her mind racing with disbelief and fury, trying to understand how her own parents could dismiss her feelings so easily. The room, once a place of peace, had become a battlefield, and she knew one thing for certain, she wouldn't let this slide. If you want, I can continue writing the next scene with the parents' justification in the same style, keeping it simple, engaging, and viral ready. She stood in the middle of the room, staring at the neat, unfamiliar space, her chest tight with anger. Her mother came in first, brushing past her as if nothing had happened. "Oh, don't look so upset," she said lightly, smiling. "Your brother and his wife need the room more than you do." She blinked, trying to process the words. "Need it more? This is my room. I've lived here for years." Her voice trembled, half in disbelief, half in fury. Her father appeared behind her mother, nodding casually. "We just thought it made sense," he said, as if explaining the weather. "They're starting their new life, and you're older now. You can move to the other room, it's fine." She felt like she'd been punched. "Fine," she repeated, her voice rising. "You just threw me out of my own room." Her mother waved a hand, dismissing her. "Don't be dramatic. We're helping your brother. You're strong, you can manage. He's our favorite, you know that." The words hit her like a slap. She had always suspected favoritism, the quiet way her parents listened more when he spoke, how her opinions were always brushed aside, how every little success of his was celebrated while hers went unnoticed. Now it wasn't subtle anymore, it was obvious, cruel. "You never asked me how I felt," she said, her voice shaking. "You just decided for me." Her father shrugged. "We know what's best for the family. You'll understand when you're older." She felt her hands clench into fists. How long had she been invisible in her own home? How many times had her voice been ignored, her feelings dismissed as unimportant? And now, right here, they had erased her space, as if she didn't matter. Her brother and his wife hadn't even been here yet, but already their presence was forcing her out. The unfairness burned inside her, hot and sharp. She wanted to cry, to yell, to throw something, but she stayed still, letting their words sink in. Every casual shrug, every patronizing smile, every excuse they offered only made her anger grow. They thought she was weak, that she would bend, that she would accept this humiliation quietly. She looked around at the room that was no longer hers, imagining the life she had built there, books stacked on the shelves, photos on the wall, the little messes that made it hers. And now it was all someone else's. Her parents didn't see her pain, they only saw their plan, their favoritism, their control. But something inside her shifted in that moment. They had underestimated her, dismissed her, thought she would fold. And she realized she wouldn't. She would find a way to take back what was hers, to show them they couldn't erase her so easily. And just like that, the seed of determination took root, quietly but fiercely, in the midst of her hurt. If you like, I can continue the script with the initial attempt to cope and negotiation, keeping the style simple, emotional, and gripping, building up toward the revenge plan. Do you want me to do that next? She spent the night tossing and turning, staring at the ceiling of the unfamiliar room she had been forced into. By morning, she knew she couldn't just sit quietly and accept this. Taking a deep breath, she decided to try reasoning with her parents one more time. She found them in the kitchen, sipping tea as if nothing had changed. "Mom, Dad," she began, trying to keep her voice steady, "I know you want to help my brother, but this was my room. I've lived here my whole life. I worked hard to keep my space tidy, to help around the house. Don't you think that matters?" Her father gave a small, distracted nod, clearly not taking her seriously. "We know, but your brother needs it more. You're older, you can adjust." She tried again, softer this time, forcing politeness into her tone. "I understand he's starting his new life, but could we maybe figure out another way? There are other rooms in the house that are empty. I just want to feel respected in my own home." Her mother looked at her with mild annoyance, shaking her head. "You're overreacting. We've already decided. You'll be fine. Stop making this a big deal." Her words felt like they bounced off an invisible wall. No matter how carefully she phrased her requests, how gently she tried to reason, her parents barely looked at her. The casual way they dismissed her pain made her chest tighten. Every polite word, every attempt to explain her feelings, was met with indifference. Her brother's upcoming presence seemed to give them an excuse to ignore her entirely. "I just want you to understand," she said, feeling her frustration rising despite her calm voice. "I'm not asking for much, just respect, just a little acknowledgement of what this means to me." But her parents didn't budge. Their faces remained calm, almost amused, as if they were watching a minor inconvenience rather than a serious betrayal. She realized, painfully, that no amount of politeness, no amount of pleading, would make them see her side. Their favoritism wasn't temporary, it was a habit, a way of controlling her by ignoring her entirely. The helplessness she felt began to transform into something else, anger sharpened with clarity. They thought she would accept this quietly, that she would shrink and step aside. But now she saw the truth, she couldn't rely on their sense of fairness. She would have to take matters into her own hands. That thought, bold and thrilling, made her chest tighten not with defeat, but with determination. For the first time, she began planning not just to cope, but to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The room wasn't just lost, it was a challenge, and she was already imagining the way she would turn the tables. "If you want, I can continue with the turning point and planning revenge next, keeping it simple, suspenseful, and full of tension." After days of being ignored and dismissed, her frustration slowly hardened into something sharper. She realized that crying, pleading, or staying polite had gotten her nowhere. Her parents thought she was weak, that she would simply accept their favoritism without protest. That thought lit a spark inside her, a spark that quickly grew into a fierce determination. She would not let them treat her this way, not her own family. She began staying up late, poring over her laptop, researching every law she could find about tenant rights and eviction. The more she read, the more confident she became. She discovered that she had legal grounds to challenge anyone occupying her space without permission. Every article she read, every case she studied, sharpened her plan. She even reached out to a lawyer friend, someone she trusted completely, asking discreetly how she could reclaim her room and assert her rights. The friend listened, nodded, and gave her practical advice, step by step. She took notes meticulously, drafting documents, checking and double-checking every detail to make sure nothing could be turned against her. The paperwork slowly took shape, formal, precise, and unassailable. While her family laughed at her temper tantrums, or brushed off her quiet questions, she smiled to herself, keeping a calm, innocent exterior. They had no idea she was plotting a quiet, perfect strike, one that would flip the power in the house completely. She walked around the house during the day, pretending to be meek and hurt, but her mind was racing with possibilities. Every conversation her parents had, every mention of her brother or his wife, was mentally filed as part of her strategy. She visualized the moment she would serve the papers, imagining their faces when they realized she had taken control. It wasn't about revenge in a messy, angry way. It was about reclaiming her dignity, asserting her worth, and showing her family that she was not someone to be ignored or pushed aside. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly powerful, not in a loud, aggressive way, but in the quiet, unstoppable certainty that she had the upper hand. The calm she maintained in front of her parents became her greatest weapon. They saw sadness, they didn't see strategy. They saw compliance, they didn't see preparation. She had transformed from the hurt, pleading daughter into someone calculated, clever, and ready to take back what was hers. And in the back of her mind, a single thought repeated, soon, they would learn exactly who she really was. If you want, I can continue writing the climactic scene where she serves the eviction notice, keeping the suspense high and the tension vivid. The morning she had been waiting for arrived, and she felt a strange mix of calm and exhilaration. In her hand, she held the papers she had prepared for weeks, neat and official, every line precise, every detail checked twice. Her heart beat steadily, but her mind was sharp, focused. She walked through the house with quiet confidence, each step measured, each movement deliberate. Her parents were in the living room, chatting casually, completely unaware of the storm about to hit them. She stopped at the doorway, took a deep breath, and said clearly, "I have something for you." Her mother looked up, expecting tears or excuses, and her father raised an eyebrow, curious. She handed the papers to her father with steady hands. "These are eviction notices," she said softly, her voice calm but firm. "They're for anyone occupying my room without my permission." The room went silent. Her parents stared at the documents, then at her, and for the first time, they looked unsure. Confusion and shock flickered across their faces. What is this?" her father stammered, his confident tone gone. Her mother's lips parted, as if to speak, but no words came. She stood tall, meeting their eyes without hesitation. "You didn't ask me, you didn't respect me, and you gave away my room. I followed the proper steps to reclaim what is mine. This is final." Her brother's upcoming visit, her parents' favoritism, all of it suddenly seemed irrelevant. The power had shifted. She was no longer the ignored child, she was the one holding control. Her calm, measured demeanor made the scene even more dramatic. They had expected tears, arguments, begging, anything but this. The reversal of roles was almost tangible, the room itself seeming to vibrate with the tension she had created. Her parents fumbled with the papers, their earlier authority crumbling. We didn't know," her mother whispered, panic creeping into her voice. Her father's face was pale, and his usual certainty replaced with hesitation. She didn't flinch. She had anticipated their reactions, their disbelief, their excuses, they all played out exactly as she had imagined. And she realized, with a quiet thrill, that she had done more than reclaim a room. She had forced them to see her as an equal, as someone not to be dismissed or pushed aside. The room was still, the air thick with tension. She breathed slowly, letting her calm dominance settle over them. This moment, the quiet victory, the shock on their faces, it was more satisfying than any angry confrontation could have been. She had planned, prepared, and executed perfectly. For the first time, they weren't in control, and she relished the taste of her hard-won triumph. In that silence, she felt a surge of power, a sense that everything was finally hers. If you want, I can continue with the parents' reaction and the public fallout, keeping it just as gripping and easy to read, leading naturally into her full empowerment. Her parents stood frozen, staring at the papers in disbelief, their earlier confidence evaporating. Her mother's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the couch, trying to gather her thoughts. This isn't possible," she stammered, her voice wavering. "We are your parents. We decide what's best for the family." Her father's face was pale, and his usual calm authority was gone, replaced by panic. "You can't just, this is ridiculous," he barked, but the words had no power anymore. She stood perfectly still, her back straight, her eyes steady on theirs. She had rehearsed this, imagined every reaction, and nothing they did could shake her now. "You made decisions without me," she said softly, but each word cut through the tension. "You thought I would stay quiet, that I would let my space be taken and my feelings ignored. You favored him, always. You ignored me, dismissed me, and yet you acted like nothing matters." Her mother's face twisted, a mixture of guilt and anger. "We only wanted to help your brother. You're being dramatic." Her father stepped forward, trying to regain control, but even his voice sounded uncertain. "We never meant to hurt you. We thought." "You thought wrong," she interrupted, calm and unshakable. "You underestimated me. You assumed I wouldn't fight back, that I wouldn't plan, that I wouldn't take action. I did what you should have done, considered fairness, respect, and rules. Now it's clear, I'm not the one to ignore." The room felt heavy, charged with the reversal of power. Her parents exchanged glances, realization dawning that their favoritism, their casual dismissal, had cost them more than they expected. Her mother's voice dropped to a whisper, almost pleading. We didn't see it that way. We didn't think." Her father shook his head, frustration and panic mixing in his eyes. "How did you even do this?" they asked in unison, but their words sounded small, powerless. She smiled faintly, not with cruelty, but with quiet triumph. "I followed the law, I planned carefully, and I didn't let emotion cloud my judgment. You thought control was yours, but you forgot one thing: you can't ignore me and expect nothing to happen." For the first time, her parents felt the weight of their own hypocrisy. All the times they had favored her brother, brushed aside her opinions, or acted as if her voice didn't matter, it came crashing back at them now, undeniable and clear. And she remained steady, unwavering, a calm storm in the middle of their panic. They scrambled to process what had just happened, but she already knew, nothing would be the same. The child they had dismissed had become the one in control, and for once, they were forced to face her on equal ground. "If you want, I can continue with the aftermath and public reaction, showing how her bold move changes everything around her, in the same gripping, simple style." Word spread quickly through the neighborhood, faster than she could have imagined. By evening, whispers floated from door to door, curious neighbors peeking through windows, friends sharing the story in hushed tones. Her parents, once confident and commanding, were now embarrassed and flustered in front of everyone who knew them. Relatives called, some outraged, some shocked, asking what had happened, and her parents' usual authority melted under the weight of public scrutiny. "How could you let this happen?" her uncle demanded over the phone, his voice sharp. Her mother muttered something about misunderstandings, but even she knew the excuses sounded hollow. For the first time, the image of control her parents had cultivated for years was cracked, and everyone around them could see it. Meanwhile, she became a quiet sensation in her own community. People admired her courage, her cleverness, and the way she had stood up for herself without losing her composure. Neighbors who had seen her as timid now looked at her with newfound respect. Her friends whispered stories of her calm, meticulous planning, amazed at how she had reversed the roles so completely. Even her brother's new wife, who had been oblivious to the tension, started to notice the shift, her power in the household no longer absolute. At home, the air had changed. Her parents no longer spoke with the same casual authority. Every word they said seemed measured, careful, weighed against the undeniable fact that she had beaten them at their own game. Her calm confidence had become a force of its own, impossible to ignore. She moved through the house differently, lighter and freer, knowing that she had reclaimed not just a room, but her dignity. The community's reaction reinforced her empowerment. Compliments and quiet praise came from unexpected corners, neighbors, cousins, even casual acquaintances who had heard the story. She realized that standing up for herself wasn't just personal, it set an example, a small but clear message that no one should be underestimated or dismissed. With each nod of respect, each approving smile, her confidence grew stronger. By the end of the week, it felt as though the world itself had shifted. Her room, her space, and her sense of self were restored, but more than that, she had taken control of her life in a way her parents had never imagined. The quiet, stunned awe of the community reminded her that power wasn't about age or authority, it was about courage, intelligence, and refusing to be silenced. For the first time in a long while, she felt completely untouchable, respected, and unstoppable. If you want, I can finish the story with the ending and full circle payoff, making it dramatic, satisfying, and memorable in the same simple, engaging style. The house had changed completely. Her parents, once so confident, now moved carefully, their earlier arrogance replaced with a quiet humility. Her brother's wife, who had arrived expecting comfort and dominance, noticed immediately that the dynamic had shifted. The room that had been hers for years was now officially and proudly hers again, organized exactly how she liked it, every detail under her control. She walked through it with a calm satisfaction, finally breathing freely in a space that reflected her personality, her effort, and her right to belong. Her life outside the house seemed brighter too. She no longer felt invisible, no longer tolerated small dismissals or favoritism. Friends, neighbors, even distant relatives looked at her differently, with respect and admiration. She had reclaimed more than a room, she had reclaimed her voice, her independence, and her sense of self-worth. Every conversation with her parents now carried a quiet power. She could speak her mind, and they had to listen. Her parents, humbled by the shock and the public reaction, began to understand what they had overlooked for so long. Even her brother's wife had to adjust, recognizing that the confident, calm, and strategic sister-in-law was not someone to dominate or dismiss. It was a subtle shift, but one that transformed every interaction in the house. Standing by the window of her reclaimed room, sunlight spilling across the floor, she smiled faintly to herself. The fear, the pleading, the anger, it had all led here. She had fought patiently, planned carefully, and executed flawlessly. She realized, with quiet pride, that respect was not given, it was taken. And in that moment, she whispered to herself, a soft but firm declaration, "This is my life, my space, my rules." For the first time, she truly felt in control, unstoppable, and entirely free.